Welcome back to Life Forces Podcast. I am your host, Bianca Giulioni, your astrologer, your spiritual mentor, your cheerleader, here to support you. And this week is the beginning of a new 3-part series called Reclaim, Activate, Flow, which happens to be the same name as my new one-on-one coaching program, Reclaim, Activate, Flow. And in sharing this 3-part series, I really want to break down my sort of 3-step method to living a life that is more aligned and what that actually means and what kind of results it can bring you. I know for me, it's provided me with a life that's a lot more easeful, that's a lot less stressful. I don't really experience burnout anymore. What else? I have more time to myself. And I also just feel like my life is authentically mine and I'm not living out someone else's story or living out someone's projection or perception of me. So for this first week, we're going to start with Reclaim, which is sort of the first step of the journey. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of little personal anecdotes that I know you'll relate to in one way or another. And if you are listening to this and at any point in the episode, you're like, I really want to explore this further and maybe try this whole thing out, then you can book a free 30-minute call with me to see if Reclaim, Activate, Flow would be a good fit for you. And you can find the link for that in the show notes. And yeah, let's just dive right in. I'm really excited to talk about this. So reclaim. What does that word mean? And how do I contextualize it? So for me, it's about getting back and recovering what's already within you. It's a process, or it doesn't even have to really be a process. It's just like a decision, an intention to reclaim what's already yours. It's not about being somebody else or doing anything radically different in order to retrieve that. And a lot of this is about your own power, just simply being who you are. And I think a lot of us intentionally are doing things that are not in alignment with who we truly are not in integrity with what's authentic to us, because we think society has certain expectations on us, or we think we should behave in a certain way for whatever reason, or we think we have to do XYZ in order to get E, whatever it is, all of that. But what I've learned over the years in studying what I've studied, for example, astrology, human design, the tarot, Ayurveda, is the more we understand who we are, the more self-knowledge that we glean, the less we can be fucked with in general. And the better it feels, honestly, because we can have all these stories in our head about how things should go, how our life should go, the type of things we should do, the boxes we should check off, however much money we should be making, whatever it is. But I'm sure you've already found, or you will discover, that certain things you had in mind are not really what your soul wants, are not really what the universe intends for you. And so one main thing about the reclaim step that is so crucial is understanding and really getting acquainted with your own personal blueprint. And for me, 2 of the best blueprints in the world of your soul are astrology and human design, your natal charts in those methodologies and those modalities. So using your exact birth date, time, and place, we can get an amazing map of what your soul wants in this lifetime and how your energy is best used to serve others and to have an amazing life, right? They are incredible guiding lights that can help us move forward, that if we feel stuck, we can refer back to, and we can be like, oh, okay, that thing, whatever it is, for me as a generator in human design, that's my energy type. There's two very simple things to remember. I have referred to this as like the human design holy trinity before, which is knowing your energy type, strategy, and authority. So for me, knowing my type, generator, knowing that I am a sacral being, knowing that I am propelled forward by the things that just light me up and I can get really energized by those things. One of those things for me is podcasting and sharing with you in this way. And then knowing my strategy, which is to respond to life instead of initiating. So whether that's, I'm scrolling on Instagram and I'm provoked by something, or I'm reading something and it inspires me, or someone asked me to do something and I decide whether it's a yes or no. That's a really important part of my process. And then the third aspect of that is one's strategy. So there's different types of strategies in human design. Generators, I believe, only have two types of authorities, which are sacral and emotional. And I'm a sacral generator. So the way I best respond to life is by breaking things down in yes or no questions. So it's literally like, do I want to do this thing? Yes or no? And a maybe or confusion is most likely a no. And the main thing here is we don't want to get our brain involved in decision making, which is kind of a trip because most of us are not used to that. Most of us are used to thinking through things logically, maybe consulting other people, making a little list, whatever. But that is not the most effective way for us to make decisions that are in alignment. That's the whole human design tangent of things. And in Reclaim, Activate, Flow, we go really deep so you understand your own individual mechanics. And this is one thing that has really helped me personally with avoiding burnout and just living in flow where I feel like we're just going downstream. I'm not like trying to doggy paddle against the current, right? And with the astrology aspect, there's so many different things to look at. And I think part of it, again, is going back to basics, because a lot of people just download CoStar or just read things on the internet and think they have an intimate understanding of their natal chart. And those tools can be really helpful, but to see it through the lens of a professional astrologer and to also understand things like aspects in your chart, like how certain planets interact with others, can be super, super helpful, because certain aspects can maybe present more challenges than others. Certain ones can bring more ease to your chart and just things kind of click more than others, things like that. But the bottom line in this reclaim stage of reclaiming who you are, reclaiming your power and your potency, is that it's impossible to be an imposter if you're being yourself, right? And that's a beautiful feeling, because a lot of people, especially women, at some point in their lives, in some point in their careers, for example, will feel like an imposter. And to a certain degree, this is just normal human stuff, and that's fine. But I think also a lot of it is maybe sometimes we are pretending to be something we're not, or we're doing it in a way that doesn't fundamentally make sense for us. But it's always about who you are being. And if you understand the true essence of yourself, which you will learn in this reclaim phase of everything, then you can't be an imposter, because you're doing things your way, in a way that's authentic to you. And it always comes back to who you are being, not what exactly you're doing. Let's say people could have the same career occupation. Like you could be a doctor, but the way you're going to be a doctor is going to be different depending on who you are. Some people can be doctors that really want to connect with their patients, some not. And depending on who you are, either of those might be correct for you. And with all of this, like, I have discovered over the years, I really enjoy looking at who I am from different angles. And I really like helping people do that too, because sometimes it's only when you see things from a different perspective do they really click. But here, like, something to be, mindful of is it's not about becoming overly attached to certain labels, but it's about the curiosity about different parts of yourself and how they operate and how they work together, how maybe sometimes they work against each other. But I think it's really important to not be stuck in like, I am this, I am that, I am always going to be like this, because that can often be limiting to us when we do that. And we are always allowed to grow and evolve and shape shift as a way of exploring the world and expanding. One thing I found really interesting in the reclamation process, in the reclaim process, is looking at the shadow, our own shadow that we have within ourselves, often buried very deep within us. And the shadow can feel like a really lofty concept. But one of the best ways to think about it is in terms of the things that trigger us in others. Those most often are things that we need to reclaim within ourselves. For example, I used to be really confused and sometimes honestly a little scared of Capricorn energy. I did not understand people I knew who were Capricorns. I was like, we are speaking a different language. I don't get it. For context, I'm a Cancer sun. My South Node's in Cancer and my Chiron is in Cancer. So that's where I feel comfortable. And that's also where a lot of like my wounding is too, is just like the sensitivity and the emotional stuff, right? And the wanting to nurture and feel nurtured. Whereas the Capricorn energy, I couldn't always vibe with. I was like, wow, you're just really put together in a way that I couldn't be. You're making budgets for your trip. Couldn't be me. Things like that. You have a 5-year plan. Okay, cool, not for me. But then I realized Capricorn is my North Node. And I've definitely talked about the North Node on this podcast before. They have to do with the eclipses, but your personal North Node is all about what your soul is meant to move towards in this lifetime. So that is definitely one crucial thing that we go over in the reclaim aspect of all of this is, what is your North Node? That is a major thing. That is your like shining guiding star, your light that you want to move towards. And so understanding that mine is Capricorn made me be like, oh, all these people that I'm like triggered by, I actually have a hell of a lot to learn from them. And to ignore these things and to therefore ignore this aspect of myself would really be stifling my own growth. So that is something I've had to come to terms with. And that is something I've had to embrace. Things like my ambition, taking responsibility for my own stuff, structuring my life a little more, having more of a long-term vision instead of being really like myopic and just focusing on like now or like dwelling on what's happened in the past, is like, okay, no, let's dial into that Capricorn energy, right? Another major important step in this reclaim process is really tapping into your values, your own personal values. What do you actually care about, right? What's important to you outside of what you've been taught or what you've been absorbed in without thinking about it? So for me, I had this phase near the end of my time in Berlin where I was convinced that, the key to my happiness would be to get a bigger apartment in Berlin. And I just envisioned myself in this nice, modern, bigger space. I even found apartments that kind of fit the description and tried to apply for them and stuff, even though the money I had was not there, not going to work. And I thought that's what I wanted and needed. And it was only later that I realized, okay, sure, part of that was kind of this egoic thing, but part of it was also showing me, in wanting the bigger apartment, it was showing me what I fundamentally needed or was craving. And it was just more of a general sense of expansion and growth. And what ended up happening is probably a few months after that, I ended up moving to Greece. And coincidentally, I did end up living in a bigger space, maybe even bigger than the certain apartment I was wanting in Berlin. But it was also more affordable, right? It was also actually in the realm of my possibility. So that realization and, some of that tension I experienced in wanting the bigger apartment in Berlin and knowing in my current circumstances it wasn't possible, was the universe showing me how I could get a version of that in even a better way. Sometimes what we have planned is nothing. It's like a tiny button compared to the beautiful cashmere cardigan that God or the universe wants to give us, but we just have to expand our perception a little bit or see things differently. And another thing is something that I used to value that was more a societal thing that wasn't necessarily to do with what I valued personally, was higher education and showing people how smart I am. When I was younger, I wanted to be a psychiatrist, since I was 7 or something crazy like that. But then when I actually got to university and got to some of those bigger, Psych 101 classes with 600 people in them, I was completely no, this isn't for me. So thank goodness I had those experiences and I was flexible enough to be okay, I thought I wanted this. This is not working for me. And I went in a slightly different direction and ended up studying art history, which coincidentally was a much smaller department. And we studied a lot of theory and philosophy alongside actually looking at art and analyzing art. So that was pretty cool. So I think awareness when it comes to what your values actually are and checking in with yourself whether or not you're actually living them out is super important. And maybe you're not in a position where you can exactly be in alignment with your values all the time, but you can make small shifts toward that every single day. And I think this is one of the ways that people end up living a life that doesn't really feel like theirs, is they're accidentally living by someone else's values, right? Your parents, your family, societies, whatever it is, you're living by those values, maybe never actually figuring out what your own values are. So that's something to take a look at. Another thing that is really important when we want to reclaim our power, our energy, our destiny, really, is envisioning and thinking about our future self. It's really easy to just go through life almost on autopilot, like, okay, I go to my job or I go to school, I do XYZ, whatever, but we're not thinking of a bigger vision. And this doesn't have to be such a strict, like, 5-year plan, 10-year plan, whatever. But when we want to grow, when we want to change and evolve, we need to have a compelling vision for being someone better. What does that feel like? What is your desired state? Is it, I want to wake up in the morning without feeling anxious? Is it, I want to go to bed at night feeling like I accomplished a lot, feeling happy, whatever it is? And the thing here is, it's okay to have a future self vision that feels really big and different from what your current life looks like. It's just important that we emphasize the progress towards that, however small, rather than perfection. Even if you just get closer to the feelings that your future self would feel every day, like for me, it has a lot to do with being calm, feeling safe, feeling abundant, not worrying about money. Even if I don't have $1 million in the bank yet, if I can focus on those things, not worrying about money, feeling chill, enjoying my life now, that is major progress. Major progress. Because who wants to be a multimillionaire that is stressed and depressed? Certainly not I. Certainly not I. And the last thing I want to talk about here is the importance of boundaries. And I know a lot of people in the psychological space talk about boundaries all the time. Even outside of it, it's become more of a mainstream thing, which is very good. And a lot of the times it's we emphasize, boundaries with other people, which is totally fine. But what I've noticed is actually often what's more important is the boundaries we cultivate with ourselves, right? So it's about asking yourself, okay, now that I have seen this vision of who I want to be, and I understand the values that I want to live my life aligned with, and I also understand my energy and what my soul truly wants, what boundaries do I need to cultivate in order to stay in integrity and actually move through life in a way that's aligned with this future self? And so a lot of times for me, it's having those good boundaries with myself. It's having more discipline. For example, today we have family visiting, but I told myself this morning I need to record at least one podcast episode. So I could have just, because we met up for coffee with them, could have just thrown out that whole idea and be like, no, it's not the right time, blah, blah, blah. Instead, I went for like half an hour or whatever it was. I did my stuff before. I didn't rush over there. I could have gone earlier, but I still did my workout, had my good breakfast, showered, whatever, went there for a little bit, and then came back here. And instead of like making excuses like, oh, I only have this much time, that much time, I was like, no. My future self would record this podcast and would be very proud and feel accomplished that it's done. So that's one boundary of many that I set with myself on a daily freaking basis. So I really hope that you got some good nuggets from this episode. I shared some, but certainly not all, of the whole reclaim step in my Reclaim, Activate, Flow process. And I will be back next week and the week after talking more about activating and flowing through life with your energy and all your amazing gifts and what that can bring you. And so, again, if you're interested in this, go to the link in the show notes. Now is the best time to get in because I'm offering the first few people beta pricing in exchange for your feedback and a testimonial and all that jazz, because I want to make sure this process is completely on point before I go full price and share it with others. But I know it's going to be so amazing because I've basically been developing all of these skills over the past however many years, at least 3-4 years. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find me on all podcast platforms and vice versa. Would love that support. If you could write a review, that's incredible as well. And you can find the links to sign up to my newsletter, for example. I love sharing things there. Great way to stay connected as well. And you can follow me on Instagram at Life Forces Inc., TikTok as well. I will be getting back on that saddle soon, if not already now. But I hope you are all having a beautiful Gemini season, enjoying this new Jupiter and Gemini energy, which can be really stimulating and amazing. And as I said, I think it was in the Jupiter and Gemini episode, it's a time where we're like definitely able to tap in and get a lot of amazing ideas and inspiration, but it's an equally great time to have someone who can help you refine those ideas and figure out what to focus on. And we can see a lot of that in your human design chart, in your astrology, especially when it comes to astrology, what specific transits you're going through. And this is all in Reclaim, Activate, Flow. So thank you so much for watching, listening, being here on the Life Forces podcast. Love you so much. Enjoy. Go out there and reclaim your stuff. Bye.